All right, welcome back to the Conviction Fiction. I'm your host, Antoine Rivers, and this is where we dive deep into stories of transformation, resilience, and second chances. Again, my name is Antoine Rivers, and I want to bring you to a special episode because we're going to explore a topic that touches all of us: how pressure can distort our judgment and lead us down paths we never thought we'd take. Our guest today is Bill Carlson, an ethics trainer, public speaker, and writer who knows all too well how unexamined pressure can lead to unethical behavior. Now, Bill's story is a powerful example of how internal insecurity, he's probably going to get on that in a minute, can erode, or those external pressures, they can erode even the best of intentions. After serving time for a white collar crime, Bill embarked on a transformative journey of self reflection, sparked by a simple but piercing question that his daughter asked him. We're going to get into that. We're going to see what that question was, because since then, Bill has dedicated his life to helping others understand and prevent unethical behavior, teaching how cultivating gratitude. That's a strange notion, being grateful for something, how that gratitude can actually ground us, even in the most stressful of circumstances. So I'm excited for you guys to hear this story today. This is the Conviction Fiction. Hey, Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Antoine. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a while. We've been trying to get this thing happening for about a month now. We had in-laws, burgers, all kinds of stuff going on.
The burgers are waiting right now, but we'll get to those soon enough.
We'll get to those soon enough. Now, Bill, your story is a powerful one, and I know it will resonate with so many of our listeners. But let's start by unpacking the concept that you mentioned to me, like in our initial talks. You said the idea that unethical behavior doesn't come from bad people, but rather from unexamined pressure. Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, and as I mentioned to you in our first conversation, I can tend to give more than you ask in an answer. So let me give as brief as I can backdrop. So when I realized I needed to make changes in my life, because I was raised differently, I raised my children differently, I had to learn why I made those decisions. To answer the question that we'll talk about in a little bit, Dad, what the hell were you thinking? So I did a deep dive on myself when I got in. I mean, if there's a benefit for those of you watching that have been away, if there's a benefit of prison, you have unlimited amount of time to work on yourself, emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually. And I chose to use that time to answer that question my daughter had asked me, what was it that I was thinking about? So through a great deal of introspection and research, I learned that the reason that a lot of people, let me back up a second. I taught a class, me and another gentleman, while we were away. We entitled it Bitter or Better, Learning to be Grateful and Finding Happiness in Prison and Beyond. And one of the things we learned in that class, teaching other inmates, was that many of us were there and made bad decisions for the same reasons. We were looking to find happiness outside of us, okay? So going back to the question that you asked about the pressures, we all face internal and external pressures. So internal pressures are obviously those that come from within us. For me, it was keeping my family happy, keeping them in the lifestyle they've been accustomed to, making myself feel good, making sure we had a big house. And what's interesting is, although I was white collar offender, many of the guys that I taught were non-white collar, drug related, and they felt some of the same pressures. They wanted a family to have everything. They wanted to feel like the man. So there's pressures on us internally. Now, the vast majority of people don't act on those, but you've heard about keeping up with the Joneses, right? You've heard about comparison, right? Your neighbor gets a new car and like, dang, that's a nice car. And now there's also external pressures. If you work in a company, we see it all the time. How about peer pressure, right? Ever since we were in school, you're in one of the gang groups with the cool kids and they're making fun of somebody not in there, while you may not say anything, you're not going to raise your hand to say stop. So the pressures are there, and some of us chose to act on those pressures. So
I agree. Now
it
that's a really
was
powerful. That's a really powerful insight. Because in your case, you were facing both that internal pressures of, we grow up and we hear about self-esteem and not succumbing to peer pressure, but that shit, it goes over into adulthood. It goes over to adulthood. You want to be those cool kids. Now,
right.
yeah. So
Let me interject one thing though, please. It's important to know that pressures aren't excuses. It's not an excuse to act in the way I did or for anybody else. So I wasn't looking to say, well, I did it because of that. Nobody held a gun to my head and said, you got to embezzle money from one of your clients. So it's not an excuse.
Yeah, so let me get into that a little bit. Not too deep, of course, right? But can you share a little bit more about how those pressures slowly started to erode your judgment and then led to the decisions that changed your life?
That's a good question. So both of my kids were in private high school. My wife at the time didn't work. And the lifestyle, as you get older, you go from a 12-year-old spending money to a 15-year-old spending money to a 16-year-old spending money. And quite frankly, I didn't have the courage to tell them we got to cut back. I mean, I was making a good living by any stretch of the imagination. We were living well, but I just, I didn't want to disappoint them. And again, I'm not looking for an excuse for my actions. I did it, but I didn't have the balls to say we got to cut back. And so it just eats over time, and you want to provide, and again, it's not an excuse, but it just built up, and I made that first mistake, and it's kind of like so dark chocolate is my kryptonite, man. I love dark chocolate, so I can't keep it in the house because if I do, I know I'll snack on it. But if I have it in the house, I can hear it calling me, and that first bite or two, I feel a little guilt, but then after an hour, I've eaten a whole darn bar of chocolate. And I know that's a simple analogy. You make that first step over the line, the next one is always easier.
Yeah, that's how it normally is. Like if you were, those kryptonite type of deals with, internally that you deal with. Once you take that first bite, you like, hey, I actually deserve this, right? The ego kicks in. The ego kicks in, and that's like an external pressure that you've seen that in other people's lives that can push them into making unethical decisions. But what are the most common things that you see in your field? What are the common external pressures in other people's lives, not just yours?
Yeah, well, I was in the investment industry. So external pressures would be sales goals, revenue goals. You see it in the business community all the time. Right?
Is it always financial though?
Oh no! Well, I'm just saying that I was in the financial community. Well, it's financial, and then it's also you build your self-esteem by he's a big or she's a big producer, and then everybody in the office thinks you're cool, and the whole company thinks you're cool, and they put you up on a pedestal. And it's interesting. I was actually with a couple guys that were investment advisors, and they all did the same stuff, man. They didn't take money, but they were selling products that just generated the most amount of income because then you get that esteem that you talk about. Here's the big swinging so-and-so in the office. So external pressures come from, it's usually but it's also an internal pressure, man, because there's a lot of people in business that don't take that leap, right? And that's where gratitude comes in. We'll talk about it a bit, but go ahead, Adam. I'm sorry.
We're going to get into that. Definitely. We're going to get into that.
I know you are.
But looking back, right, what do you think were some of the warning signs that you missed along the way that might have helped you avoid those unethical decisions? Were there any warning signs like maybe I shouldn't be doing this shit?
Well, yeah, because I knew what I was doing was wrong. I mean, the warning signs, that's a great question. So from the family perspective, the warning signs were not, and when I say cut back, it's not like we were going to be eating government cheese cut back. All right.
Ramen
It
noodles,
was,
maybe? Ramen noodles are good,
well,
bro.
dude, I went to college on ramen noodles. You could get 10 of them for $1 back in the day. You grill a piece of chicken and with the ramen noodles, and
Yeah, hook them up. Hook them up.
yeah. But and my kid, yeah. So it was not. It was having and again, when I keep saying the family, it's not using it as an excuse, Antoine. That was the pressure, man. And I instead of having the courage to say, we got to cut back, man. We gotta, you were going to go away to college, but now you may have to go to a junior college, right? And
Yeah.
I didn't. I gained a lot of my self-esteem, maybe my insecurities, by letting us look like we had all this stuff, right? And
Right.
so I felt like the big guy, and maybe I would have felt like I was a failure because we would have had to cut back.
Yeah. I think that's like an inherent pressure with, I don't know if it's a male thing, but I know I go through that. I've been through that too, where it's like, I got to keep up. Now, as far as,
Yeah.
committing crimes or whatever, but there's a certain level, a certain status that you set for yourself, a standard,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't want to let people down. You really
Yeah.
don't.
I mean, I grew up in a 3-bedroom, 1-bath apartment in Chicago, and we were happy, right? The house we had when this all went down, shit, I had rooms I didn't even go in, man.
Yeah.
And I didn't need it. But, one house led to another, and I kept thinking, and we'll talk about that as you go on, but I kept thinking that next house was going to make me happier. And it got bigger and more expensive, and I wasn't happy. I was looking for happiness outside of me.
Yeah. Now, you've spoken before about that transformative moment when your daughter asked you, Dad, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
Can you walk us through how that
Well, she
moment of
actually
reflection?
texted it. Yeah. So both of my kids were away at college,
Mhm.
and I was I didn't tell them this was all going down. And then when I waited till I had formally indicted, then I figured I better tell them. So I remember that day, man, like it was yesterday for all the wrong reasons. It was a cold February day here in Chicago. I was at a local grocery store parking lot. It was snowy. I had them both on the line. I basically said, and this gets tough to get through. I've probably told the story 100 times, and it's still. I said, hey, I was taking money from one of my clients. I'm no longer going to be in the industry, and I'm most likely going to prison. My son had some very colorful language for me and hung up. My
No.
daughter began to cry and hung up. The next day, I got a text from her, and it just said, Dad, what the hell were you thinking? And I couldn't answer it, man. And that was a turning point in my life that I couldn't answer that. I was early 50s, and I couldn't answer that question.
Yeah. Now
And I committed at that point. I had to find out, man. I had to find out.
yeah, I see it's still one of those touching moments for you. It's such a profound moment. Now it's easy to imagine that it wasn't just about regret, but also about the deeper process of really just trying to understand where things went wrong. And I think with your
Right.
the way you do things now, teaching about unethical behavior and those factors that we spoke about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how did that question though? How did that lead you to start examining not just your actions, but just the inherent values that kind of transcend everybody? How did you transform that to everything that you do now?
Well, I had to answer it for myself first, right? So
Right.
as I was away and in that journey, that it was first to find it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And what through research, and then I tell you that class I mentioned, it ended up being like a laboratory, if you will, because I got to interview so many different guys.
Right.
And some were white collar, many were non white collar. And I found we were all chasing the same thing. And the thing was, we were all trying to find happiness outside of us. And if you go to my website, you see the logo of the butterfly. Have you ever tried to chase a butterfly when you were a kid? They're impossible to catch, right?
Yeah,
Because that's why they made butterfly
very
nets.
quick. Very quick.
They're quick, right?
Yeah.
And the more you chase it, the faster that little butterfly goes up and down and sideways, right? When
The
we go to
angles,
find
they just
happiness,
change angles quick.
exactly. So when we go to find happiness outside of us, guess what happens? It's just like that butterfly. It goes this way, it goes that way. So I was trying to find happiness with things. Some people try to do it with money. Some people try to do it with power. Some people try to do it with status. And what I learned through self-reflection and through just reading is that you can't, the Dalai Lama tells us you can't find happiness outside. It has to come from within, right? So I was able to answer that question. I was chasing butterflies. And that meant I was trying to get happiness right outside of me. I get a watch and I'd have it for a little bit and I need a new watch. And think about it. You go to Best Buy, you get that 65-inch TV, you're feeling good, you're walking out and there's the 80-inch TV.
It's the 85, babe.
Yeah.
Right there.
Well, you go to
it's on sale.
Now football season's around the block. You go to your buddies, he's got the 85, you come home, and you tell your wife or whoever, I can't even see the TV on that 60-inch. I get the 85, I'll be happy. And you get the 85, and then what do you come out with? The 95.
No,
right?
then you get a projector on the wall.
Yeah. So going back, so I learned for myself that's what I was doing, was chasing. And then you look around society, man, and that's what we're all doing, is chasing, and social media has just really turbocharge this. But you see 15 seconds of someone's best life. Great looking woman, great car, great clothes, great job. Oh my God, I got to have that. And so I realized that is, we're all searching for happiness outside of ourselves. And so when I first went away, so I was very fortunate growing up. Both of my parents are still alive. They're still together. Very fortunate, awesome. Loving house. At my age, you still got tuned up back then. All right. And I should have got tuned up a lot more than I did, because I did a lot of crazy stuff.
When you say tuned up, what does that mean exactly? It's a new breed of listeners out here.
Really? A tune-up is a belt. Mom throwing an ashtray at you because she knew she couldn't hurt you with luckily she was a bad toss. Say, once your dad gets home, you're like, oh God, I hope he gets in an accident on the way home today, man. God, don't let him come home today. But it was a loving house and we had everything. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor, right? I had good, healthy kids. I had a great career. My spouse, even though it wasn't going well, she was a good mother, man. I had everything in my life. Everything. And I had my health, and none of it had to do with stuff. And I can tell you today, if I would have recognized all that I had in my life, Anton, that was nothing related to possessions, I firmly believe that the pressures to act unethically wouldn't have been as strong as they were. I know that in my heart.
Okay, so moving ahead, like forgiveness. We're going to talk about self-forgiveness. What role did that play in your journey of reflection? I know you've been through that. You were doing what you're doing, unethical behavior. You got your kids. Did you struggle with reconciling your past actions with the man who you wanted to become?
Oh, I would be less than honest if I didn't tell you I'll carry some of that guilt with me forever, because I hurt so many people. I let my family down. I let my client down. I let my business partners down. One time when we were emailing when I was, I forgot the name of the system in the federal system, but anyhow, my dad said, he says, I take partial responsibility for what you did. He said, shit, Dad, I'm 51 years of age, man. You had nothing to do with this, maybe 52. So going back to, but you have to eventually, although I'll carry some of that guilt, you have to stop saying you're sorry. And I stopped at a certain point. I just couldn't say anymore, I'm sorry, because I couldn't heal. And I do think there is some benefit to carrying some of that guilt, so that if I ever get in a position again where I'm thinking I'm doing something really stupid, I think
Yeah.
back to the pain I caused people.
Yeah, that's one of my another guest. He referred to it as what did he say? What did he call it? Eric. He's I guess he's been on a couple of times. It's like a good guilt. It's a good
Yeah,
guilt.
yeah, 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 yeah. It is. Yeah, it's a good guilt. I don't walk with my head down.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you one of the things, when I go out and speak, I do a lot at universities. I go down here to Cook County next on the 25th, spending a day down at state prison here in Illinois doing it's Defy Ventures. They're teaching inmates to become entrepreneurs. Every time I do that, it takes a little bit of that guilt away. So there is some selfishness in that, as much as I'm helping others, it's helping me a little bit.
Yeah, and that goes into my next question. Like, was there a moment when you were like in your self healing, when you were forgiving yourself, where you just realized that, hey, this story could help prevent others from making mistakes? What was that like?
Yeah. Well, uh, so the class that me and this other inmate created, Bitter or Better,
Mhm.
that kind of started that because you didn't get paid for it, right? It wasn't, and you had to do it on your own time. We had to create all the curriculum and to create everything. But you got guys in there. I mean, I'm as pasty as they come, right? And you had guys from the west side of Chicago, south side of Chicago, that our lines would have never crossed paths ever. But here we are, and we're
Right.
sharing. After it's an 8-week course, and after a while, you really get to open up with each other.
Yeah.
And that I realized. So my actions got me to prison, but I do believe, from a spiritual sense, there was a purpose for me to learn, and it is to go out and help others that didn't have, as I was mentioning earlier. I had so many breaks in life. Got to go to college, and early on when I was I met so many guys that had born with 2 strikes against them, and you're in Atlanta, so they had Greg Maddox on the mound, right?
Yeah.
They were almost expected to be there, and I was there, and we were all wearing the same shitty green uniforms, and it hit me that I fell so much farther than those guys did, and I said, I gotta do something because these are some really good guys. They just didn't have some of the breaks that I had.
Right. You were Sun Devil, right? Arizona State.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. I was hoping we'd draft Scadaboo to the Bears, but he went to the Giants.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, that was a tough
And
running. He's a tough running back, bro. He's
yeah,
tough.
it's like a bowling ball. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, good
Now
call.
I
Yeah.
want to
So
shift gears just a little bit, shift gears a little bit. Now you mentioned gratitude. You talked about gratitude, how that can act as an antidote for unethical behavior.
mhm.
By recentering our values and helping us make better decisions, gratitude, if we're actually having a grateful heart for what we do have, right? That
Right.
kind of I ain't gonna, it levels the playing field for, well, guess what? Some people don't have a TV, right? I'm looking
Right.
for this 85. I got a 65. I'm looking at the 85. I should be grateful for my 65. Can you elaborate on how gratitude disrupted that whole thing about your judgment and how it's now part
Right.
of your
Right.
teachings?
So I had 3 questions I had to answer when I went away. First was, what the hell was I thinking?
Mm-hmm.
Second was, how not to think that way again. No, what was I thinking? Why was I thinking that? So what was I was chasing butterflies. Why was the pressures, right? Third was, how do you not think of that way again? And again, I read a lot and I did a lot of research, and there is so much data on so much. Um, uh, the word is escaping me right now. Empirical data, meaning there's been studies on the power of gratitude, both from physical. I mean, people that live grateful lives tend to be healthier people, from emotions. And as I started to read that, and I started to, you got all this time to think, and I just went into it a little earlier. Man, I had everything to be grateful for: healthy kids, good family. Yeah, I had a good career, but okay, so let's say I didn't, let's say I wasn't making what I was doing. Let's say we didn't have the house. let's just say it wasn't that, but none of that stuff had to do with money, right? And so I started a gratitude journal, and it's not something that I didn't create the idea. I picked it up somewhere, and every day it's such a simple thing, brother. It's just on the nightstand I have a tablet. I started it when I was away, and I still have all my journals here. And every day when I start feeling sorry for myself about something, I pull them out. So at the end of every day, I write down 3 things I had to be grateful for. And most days, it's simple stuff. Today, this is going to be one, right? This is a big one.
I thought you were going to say the burgers.
Well, I'll tell you what. If
I was grateful for the burgers, bro.
Away, I'll tell you what. If I was in visiting, they had a vending machine and they had amazing hamburgers. It was terrible. But I routinely look back at the shit that I was grateful for, an email from my kids or an email from a friend or somebody had a good conversation. And we get home, we get so wrapped up in stuff, man, you forget it. So going back to your question, there is, and I challenge your viewers, just look up the Greater Good Society. They're out in University of California, Berkeley. You can sign up for free. They're going to send you emails asking for money, but it's all science-driven, research-driven on the power of gratitude. And I just realized that was, if I would have had that in my life, I know I wouldn't have felt those pressures. And
it sounds like gratitude isn't. It sounds like gratitude isn't just a feel good emotion, but a real tool for restoring clarity.
It's a wonder drug. It's easy. Yeah. It's free to use. Just you think about at the end of today, after we get done, think about 3 good things that happened to you today besides this. And here's what a gratitude journal does. It gets you thinking about the positive of the day, not the negative. Because human nature is you sit there and you go, shit, that happened, happened.
I got to do this tomorrow.
Yeah, but you sit there and go, okay, what happened today? And then you've got some younger children. Well, so-and-so had a great day, or so-and-so made me smile. They said something funny. Or,
those little things get missed. Yeah, they get missed, man. They get missed.
Of course they do. Yeah.
Now, how can people, especially those under intense pressure, right? Because you've been under intense pressure and you teach this in your classes and your seminars and lectures every day. But how could those people under that intense pressure, like, just stop, breathe, and start to practice gratitude? How do you tell them that it's okay to be grateful?
Well, it's you have to become aware, right? You have to do that self. You have to want to, right? I mean, you've got kids, and if they want to become really good at a sport, football or soccer or basketball, how do they got to practice? So the person's got to decide, this is what I'm going to do. And I'll tell you, if there are days I don't focus on this or remind myself how grateful I am, and I get caught in traffic here in Chicago, which is terrible. I start complaining about it.
Already know.
Yeah, you're in Atlanta. There isn't one day
Chicago's
when I was
terrible.
away. Yeah. Oh man. There's 2 seasons in Chicago: construction and construction. But there isn't a day when I was away that I wouldn't have been happy to be in traffic jam.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So going back to your question, people that are under immense pressure, where's that pressure coming in from? Is it external or is it internal? If it's external, can you change the environment? If it's work, can you change that? If it's internal, what is it? Is it is that 85-inch TV that's going to make me happy until the projection, or whatever it is?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's going into what my next question was, like, practical ways. You have to distinguish. It goes back to, I don't know, in the recovery environment, they say, like, things you can change, things you can't, right? That whole thing, like, things that you can change. Give me the strength to think, the courage to change the things that I can, right? And then let me know the difference. That's the biggest thing.
Right.
Like,
I can't change.
Right, exactly. So with that being said, the impact of what you do, man, the internal reflection. I got to come to one of those classes. I don't know if you got something going on in Atlanta soon, but if you're here in Atlanta, I definitely want to be there. I don't have to be VIP or anything like that, even though you're sitting in my living room right now. Bill,
Okay.
I don't have to be
Okay. All right.
VIP.
I was at Clemson a few years ago. I did,
Yeah, South
you know,
Carolina.
there at
That's right
Clemson.
up the road. Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
I flew in Atlanta and drove up there. But what I could do, I do a lot of uh, Zoom, virtual,
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
can get you invited sometime
Yeah,
to
do
sit
that,
in.
please,
But
man.
you know, let me answer your question. I just thought of an analogy. See, I'm a simple-minded guy, so I need analogies in my life so let's say somebody that really is unhealthy, right? They don't work out, they eat poorly. They know they need to make a change, or the doctor tells them you need to make a change, or this isn't going to end well. That person can either choose to make a change, start going to the gym or just walking around the block, eating a little better, or they can choose not to. Same thing holds with if you're under the pressure. Right? If you're under that pressure, if you want to make a change, you need to be proactive. You need to recognize it and start with the gratitude journal, start reading, start learning. And there's so much out there on the power of gratitude. I'll tell you, this is a guy that, and I've taught a lot of people on this, and it's interesting that the people I teach that come back, 6 months or a year later, that'll say it made a difference.
Yeah.
And it's nothing, I didn't create the idea. I just used it for me.
Yeah. Now, after going through your journey, an internal journey, because if you've done some unethical things, I think we all are. That's why we have the Conviction Fiction podcast. But what are some of the I know the mindset shifts that you talked about were with gratitude, like understanding where the pressure is coming from, and having those essential tools available to you is very important. It's incredible, I think, how you've turned your experience into a force for good, not only for yourself, but for others who may be struggling with their own pressures. Now, looking ahead, right? We're looking ahead. What's next for you? And how do you continue to use your voice to advocate for ethical excellence in both personal and professional spaces?
So, no, I was just saying, I do a lot of work with universities, and I always will. They give you swag. So I got some really neat stuff from universities. They don't really pay. But that'll always be part of my practice because I was saying, if I can affect one person in a presentation, then it's worth whatever.
Right.
I'm doing more work on in financial planning association groups and with groups that are centered on fraud examinations. I am fortunate that I do have a daytime gig, so I can pay my bills, do all that I need to do with that, and then use this as really my outlet, the thing
There
that
you
I'm
go.
passionate about.
Yeah. That's what I kind of use with the podcast.
Yeah.
What kind of impact have you seen from people who have started practicing the gratitude and through your training? Have you been able to see it come back to you? Like, yeah.
I've mentioned this, and I think it's when the screen froze. I've had some of the students over the last couple of years come back and say, Mr. Carlson, I attended. I've done University of Chicago, Yale, Northern Illinois. I'll stop there. But I get an email a year and a half later saying, hey, I was in this class. I appreciate it. I started using it, and it's really made a difference. I had a young man. He was a West Point grad. He was in a master's program at Yale, and he had some great questions. And he was a young man that you could tell had his head on right. He was worried about not getting caught up because they're a prestigious school, highly competitive, and he just said, I just want to make sure I focus on what's right and what matters in my life. He said, brother, you're on the right path. So that is worth more money than I could ever get by when they come back and say, hey, thank you.
You're a true rock star. the truth.
Well, about that, but okay.
Hey, look, Bill, this has been such an insightful conversation, man. We could probably talk for hours. I'm sure our listeners have gained a new perspective on how pressure can distort our decision making and how, like, actual gratitude can help us regain our ethical compass.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up, I want you to stick around because we're going to chop it up in our little green room afterwards. But how can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your work?
They're always welcome to email me, and I create a very complicated email. It's Bill Carlson at thebillcarlson.com. You can go to my
I know.
website, which is
Mhm.
Bill Carlson or the Bill Carlson. Um, Quite frankly, I don't know what my LinkedIn is. I use LinkedIn once in a while, but I find it's an echo chamber. Everybody's on there talking about the same stuff, patting themselves on the back. So go to my email, email me. I do respond. Bill Carlson, Carlson at thebillcarlson.com, and reach out, man. I can send book advice or books that have been insightful for me and helpful. Happy to talk with people. I don't mind picking up if they want to have a phone conversation or do a Zoom. Again, as I said earlier, my actions got me to prison, right? That's why I was there. But I know I was there for a reason, and it is to help somebody else to maybe not make the same decisions I made and just improve their lives.
I appreciate that, man. So thank you, Bill. And thank you to everyone that tuned in today or going to be listening to this on your streaming platform, whether it's Apple Music or the Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, wherever you listen. If you're interested in learning more from Bill or getting in touch, make sure to check out the links in the show notes. As always, if you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who might benefit from hearing it. We'd love for you to rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform. So go do it. Your support helps
Go
us
do
reach
it.
more people with these important conversations. Like what Bill said, go do it. Want to thank you for listening.
If I can,
Yeah,
I admire what you're doing, man, because I know you got your hands full with your family and work. And this just, we all got the same 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but you're finding that extra time to do this. So that's,
man, the
you thought
conversations are amazing, bro. I tell
yeah,
you,
I
when I
know.
speak to guys like you and other people across the country, it's something amazing for me because
Yeah,
you spoke about this earlier. The commonality, no matter where you're
yeah,
from, right? There's a
right,
commonality with you get over into that whole incarceration, and we're not going to do the right thing because we're going to do our own thing because of our ego thing, right? We kind of
right,
it's a
right.
different type of society almost. I want to say it's a whole
Yeah,
segment that kind of gets overlooked or shitted on a lot. And
yeah,
you're doing
yeah,
great things. And what we try to do on this podcast, what I try to do is highlight those stories like, hey, yeah, you did some shitty stuff, but you rebounded from it. You're taking advantage of your second chance. I've seen third chances, which I got feelings on that.
yeah, yeah, right. I mean,
It doesn't take much. It
yeah,
doesn't take
right.
much. But everybody has their own journey, and we just want to support
Yeah,
those journeys, especially when people are doing the right thing. It's never too late to turn the page and start a new chapter in your story. Right? It's never
no, I
too
mean,
late.
I was in my early 50s when I went away.
Yeah.
So maybe mid 50s. I don't know what
All right.
time it
Yeah,
is.
we're gonna
It's
take that up in the green room. What the hell were you thinking? Hey, thanks for the conviction
Thanks,
fiction,
brother. Yeah, I appreciate it.
listeners. Yeah, stick around.
Yeah, I will. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.